The night I learned my best friend wasn't who I thought she was. Growing up, Emma and I were inseparable. From the time we were 8 years old, she was the sister I never had. We met on the first day of school when she complimented my glittery backpack, and that was it. We were glued to each other for the next 15 years. Sleepovers, road trips, secrets, heartbreaks, we went through everything together. Everyone knew where you found one of us, the other would not be far behind. Emma was magnetic. She was the type of person who could walk into any room and immediately become the center of attention, without even trying. I was more introverted, but I was fine with that. I liked being in her orbit, watching her charm the world with her wit, humor, and beauty. She was bold and unafraid of anything, or so it seemed. I admired her for it. But something happened the night we turned 25, something that made me question everything I thought I knew about her. I still replay that night in my mind, trying to make sense of it, but the truth is, I will never fully understand. It was Emma's idea to celebrate our 25th birthday in style. We were both born in August, just a week apart, and we always threw a joint party. But this year, Emma wanted something different. She booked an Airbnb cabin up in the mountains, promising a weekend of relaxation, adventure, and memories. She said it was going to be just the two of us, a perfect getaway from the chaos of our daily lives. When we arrived, the place was breathtaking. The cabin was perched on the edge of a cliff, overlooking miles of dense forest, with nothing but the sound of the wind and the distant rustle of trees to keep us company. It felt like we were in another world. Emma was in high spirits, laughing and joking like always. She even brought a bottle of champagne, saying we were going to toast to our next chapter in life. The first night was perfect. We cooked dinner together, reminisced about old times, and drank way too much. We sat out on the deck, watching the stars, wrapped in blankets. I remember thinking that this was exactly where I was supposed to be. With my best friend, miles away from everything, feeling like the world was ours. But the second night, that was when everything changed. We had spent the day hiking, and by the time we got back to the cabin, we were exhausted. I offered to make dinner, but Emma insisted on taking a walk by herself. She said she needed some time to clear her head, and I did not think much of it. It was not unusual for her to want a little space. Emma had always been independent, even though we were close. I stayed in the cabin, reading a book while I waited for her to come back. An hour passed. Then 2. I started to get worried, so I texted her, but there was no reply. I called nothing. Panic set in. What if she had gotten lost, or worse, what if she had fallen somewhere in the woods? Grabbing a flashlight, I decided to go look for her. The woods around the cabin were dense, and it was pitch black outside, but I followed the path we had taken earlier, calling her name. After about 20 minutes, I saw a light flickering in the distance, like a campfire or a flashlight. Relief flooded me, and I headed toward it, expecting to find Emma sitting by the fire, maybe lost in thought. But what I found? I still have no words for it. There was a clearing, and in the middle of it, Emma was sitting cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by candles. She was muttering something under her breath, words I could not make out, but it was like she was in a trance. Her face, normally so full of life, looked pale, almost ghostly. She did not notice me at first, and for a moment, I just stood there, frozen, watching. I felt like I was intruding on something deeply personal, something I was not meant to see. But the longer I watched, the more unsettled I became. It was not just the candles or the eerie atmosphere, it was the way Emma was acting, like someone I had never known. I had never seen her like this. The confident, carefree Emma I knew was gone, replaced by someone darker. I took a step forward, and that was when she looked up. Her eyes locked onto mine, and for a split second, I swear I saw something in her gaze that was not human. It was as if her entire face shifted, just for a moment, into something unrecognizable. I wanted to scream, to run, but I could not move. Then, as quickly as it had appeared, the strange look vanished, and Emma's expression returned to normal. She smiled, but it was a hollow, distant smile. "What are you doing out here?" she asked, her voice casual, like nothing had happened. I was looking for you," I stammered, trying to keep my voice steady. "You were gone for hours." She stood up, brushing off her jeans like everything was fine. "I just needed some time to myself," she said, blowing out the candles one by one. "You know how I get sometimes." But I knew it was not just that. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. The rest of the weekend was a blur. Emma acted like nothing had happened, but I could not shake the feeling that I had seen something I was never meant to see. The carefree vibe of the trip was gone, replaced by a thick tension that neither of us acknowledged but both of us felt. I tried to act normal, to laugh at her jokes and enjoy the last day, but inside I was filled with a gnawing unease. I kept thinking back to that moment in the woods, her face, the candles, the strange words she had been muttering. I could not understand it. This was Emma, my best friend, the girl I had trusted with every part of my life. How could she suddenly feel like a stranger when we drove back to the city? Emma was her usual bubbly self, talking about the hike, making plans for our next weekend trip, and suggesting we catch a movie later that week. But I could not shake the memory of the night before. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I had imagined the weirdness because of the eerie atmosphere in the woods. But deep down, I knew better. Something had shifted between us, something that I could not explain. For the next few days, I tried to avoid Emma as much as I could without making it obvious. I needed time to process what had happened, to figure out if I was overreacting or if there was really something more sinister going on. But the more time I spent away from her, the more I started to notice other things. Little things. Like how she always seemed to know where I was, even when I had not told her. How she would text me at the exact moment I was thinking about her. Or how I would find random items in my apartment, candles, strange symbols drawn on pieces of paper that I knew I had never bought. It all came to a head one night, about 2 weeks after the cabin trip. I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at my door. It was nearly midnight, and I had not been expecting anyone. My heart raced as I went to check the peephole. It was Emma. I hesitated for a moment before opening the door. "Hey," I said, trying to keep my voice casual, even though my mind was racing. "What are you doing here so late?" She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I just wanted to check in on you. You have been distant lately. Is everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, I have just been busy with work. You know how it is." Emma stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning my apartment like she was looking for something. "Busy with work," she said, her tone light, but there was an edge to it that made my stomach twist. "You are not avoiding me, are you?" The question caught me off guard. "No, of course not," I lied. "Why would I avoid you?" She took a step closer, and I felt an overwhelming urge to back away, but I forced myself to stay still. "Because," she said softly, "you saw something you should not have seen that night in the woods, did you not?" My blood ran cold. I do not know what you are talking about," I stammered, my heart pounding in my chest. Emma's smile widened, but it was not friendly. It was predatory. Oh, come on, do not play dumb. You saw the candles, you heard the chanting. You felt it, did you not? The power. I took a step back, my mind racing. What are you talking about, Emma? This is crazy. She laughed, but there was no warmth in it. Crazy? No, it is not crazy. It is real. I tried to keep you out of it, you know. I thought you would not understand. But now that you are in, there is no going back. Panic surged through me. Going back from what? What is this? Some kind of joke? Because if it is not funny. Emma's eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw the same look I had seen in the woods, the one that made her seem not quite human. This is not a joke. You have always been so naive, thinking the world was simple, that everything was black and white. But there are things out there, things you cannot even begin to understand. And I am part of it now. I backed away until my back hit the wall. Emma, please, stop. This is not you. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Oh, it is me. The real me. The one I have kept hidden for years. And now that you know, you have two choices, join me, or stay out of my way. My heart was racing so fast I thought it might burst out of my chest. I do not know what you want from me. She reached out and touched my arm, and I flinched at the coldness of her skin. I want you to trust me, like you always have. We are best friends, right? This is just a new chapter, a new adventure. But you have to let go of the fear. You have to embrace the unknown. I stared at her, feeling like I was trapped in a nightmare. This was not the Emma I knew. Or maybe it was, and I had just never seen this side of her before. Either way, I knew I could not trust her anymore. Not after what I had seen, not after the way she was acting. I need time to think, I said, my voice shaking. Emma studied me for a moment, then nodded. Okay. But do not take too long. The clock is ticking, and once the door closes, it stays closed. Forever. She turned and walked out of my apartment, leaving me standing there, shaking and terrified. As soon as the door clicked shut, I locked it, my hands trembling. I did not sleep that night. I did not sleep for days, actually. Emma kept texting me, calling me, trying to act like everything was normal. But I knew it was not. I knew that whatever had happened in the woods had changed her, and there was no going back to the way things used to be. In the end, I had to cut her off. Block her number, delete her from social media, and even move to a new apartment. It felt drastic, but I could not shake the feeling that she was watching me, waiting for me to make my choice. And deep down, I knew that as long as I stayed connected to her, I would never be safe. I do not know what happened to Emma after that. Sometimes, I wonder if she is still out there, waiting for me to come back into her life. Other times, I try to convince myself that I imagined it all, that there is a logical explanation for what I saw. But in my heart, I know the truth. The friend I thought I knew is gone. And whatever she has become now, I hope I never have to face it again. After I cut Emma off, my life changed in ways I never could have predicted. For the first few months, I lived in a state of constant anxiety. Every shadow, every creak in the night sent my heart racing. I would wake up drenched in sweat, convinced that Emma was standing outside my window, waiting to drag me back into whatever dark world she had fallen into. I even considered moving back to my hometown, far from the city where Emma and I had built so many memories, but I knew that distance would not be enough. Emma was everywhere in my mind. I thought I would feel free once I severed ties, but instead, I felt haunted by the past. Every time my phone buzzed, even though I had blocked her, I feared it was her somehow getting through. I began to avoid social gatherings, too paranoid that I might bump into her unexpectedly. She had always been so connected to everyone, and I had no idea who might still be in contact with her. I did not want to ask, I did not want to know. One night, about 6 months after cutting her off, I was having dinner with a mutual friend, someone who had not been as close to Emma as I was but still knew her well. We had been catching up on the usual stuff, work, family, plans for the future. But then, out of nowhere, she brought up Emma. "I ran into Emma the other day," she said casually, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. My heart stopped. I tried to keep my face neutral, but I could feel the panic rising. "Oh, how is she?" I asked, my voice strained. My friend tilted her head, giving me a puzzled look. "Honestly, she seemed different. I mean, she has always had that magnetic energy, but there was something off about her. She was talking about these weird spiritual things, and I do not know, she just felt distant. Like she was there, but not really there, you know." I swallowed hard, my stomach churning. "Yeah, I know exactly what you mean." My friend looked at me for a moment, sensing the tension in my voice. "You two haven't spoken, right? I thought you guys had a falling out or something." I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "We haven't spoken in a while. Things got complicated." She nodded, clearly sensing there was more to the story but thankfully not pressing. "Well, whatever happened, I hope she's okay. But I wouldn't be surprised if she's into something weird. She always had that side, you know, a little too interested in the darker stuff." I forced a smile, but inside, I was reeling. I wanted to ask more, where she had seen Emma, what exactly she had said, but I could not bring myself to dig deeper. The truth was, I was terrified of what I might find out. After that dinner, the nightmares started again. I dreamed of the woods, of Emma standing in that circle of candles, her eyes glowing with something dark and dangerous. In my dreams, she would reach out to me, whispering my name, telling me it was not too late to join her. Every time I woke up, I felt her presence lingering in the room, as if she was just beyond the veil of reality, waiting for me to slip up and let her back into my life. I began to withdraw even more. I stopped going out with friends, stopped answering calls from anyone who might be connected to Emma. I changed jobs, hoping a new routine might help me escape the memories. But nothing worked. She was always there, lurking in the back of my mind. Then, one day, something happened that shook me to my core. I was sitting in my apartment, working on some freelance projects, when my phone buzzed with a notification from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat. I knew it could not be Emma. I had changed my number twice since we had last spoken. But when I opened the message, my blood ran cold. It was a photo. A picture of the two of us, from years ago, sitting on the porch of that cabin in the mountains. It was the night before everything had gone wrong, the night we had laughed and toasted to our future like everything was perfect. I remembered that moment vividly because I had taken a similar photo on my own phone. But this one was different. In the background, barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a shadowy figure. It was not clear enough to make out who or what it was, but I knew, deep in my gut, that it was Emma. Or at least, something that had once been Emma. The message had no text. Just the photo. And no matter how many times I tried to trace the number, it led nowhere. It was as if the sender did not exist. For days, I could not sleep. I kept replaying that night in my head, trying to remember if there had been something lurking in the shadows, something I had not seen at the time. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to doubt my own memories. Had I missed something back then, or was this some kind of sick game Emma was playing, trying to pull me back into her world? I tried to brush it off, convincing myself it was just a coincidence, a prank, or even my own paranoia. But then, the photos kept coming. One after another, always from different numbers, always pictures of Emma and me from our past. Some of them were familiar old road trips, birthday parties, beach vacations, but others were photos I had never seen before. And in every single one, that shadowy figure was always there, lurking just out of sight. I knew I could not keep living like this. I was spiraling, losing sleep, losing touch with reality. I started seeing a therapist, trying to make sense of everything, but even they could not help me shake the feeling that something far darker was at play. Eventually, I made a decision. I had to face Emma, once and for all. I had to find her, confront her, and put an end to whatever this was. I could not keep living in fear, constantly looking over my shoulder. So I went back to where it all began, the cabin in the mountains. I had no idea if Emma would be there, or if she was even still in the area, but it was the only place that made sense. I needed to go back, to see if there was something I had missed that night. When I arrived, the place looked exactly the same. The cabin was still perched on the edge of the cliff, the forest still dense and quiet. But there was an eerie stillness in the air, as if the whole area was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I stepped out of the car, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the trees. I made my way to the clearing where I had found Emma that night, the place where everything had changed. And there she was. Emma was standing in the center of the clearing, just like before, surrounded by candles. Her back was to me, but I knew it was her. She was chanting again, just like that night, her voice low and melodic, carrying on the wind. I wanted to turn and run, to get as far away from her as possible. But something kept me rooted in place, watching, waiting. She stopped chanting and turned to face me, a slow, deliberate smile spreading across her face. "I knew you would come back," she said softly, her voice carrying that same eerie calm. "You could never stay away." I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. I could feel the fear rising in my chest, threatening to choke me. "You were always meant to be here," Emma continued, stepping closer. "With me. This is your destiny." I shook my head, backing away. "No, Emma. I do not want any part of this. Whatever this is, it is not us. It is not who we are." She laughed, but it was a cold, hollow sound. "Oh, but it is. You just do not remember. You will, though. Soon." As she spoke, the candles around her flickered, casting strange, shifting shadows across her face. And for a moment, just a split second, I saw it again, that same inhuman glint in her eyes, the same darkness that had haunted my nightmares for months. I turned and ran. I did not stop running until I was back in my car, my hands shaking as I fumbled for the keys. I drove away as fast as I could, my heart racing, my mind spinning. I knew, in that moment, that I would never be able to escape Emma. Whatever she had become, whatever darkness she had embraced, she was part of me now. She had always been. And no matter how far I ran, she would always be there, waiting.